Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 5, Episode 8. I'm John DiCarlo. Kyle Gauss is with me today. Just the two of us.
Physically, but not really here in spirit.
If we had, that's great. If we had all the important music licenses, we could play that song. Just the two of us.
Which one?
You want like the Will Smith version?
I want the Will Smith version with little J. At the time, we didn't know it was Jaden Smith, but like with Jaden Smith, it's Jaden, right?
Yeah, Jaden.
It's not like the kid. Didn't he have a kid that went and played like U of A? I think
Will Smith did.
Yeah, I think Will Smith had a son who played football, who was like a wide receiver that went to U of A, and then he didn't really do anything, and he was not the one in just the two of us. I don't think.
Really?
I'll confirm. I'll have our stat department.
We'd have to
figure that
our
out.
stat department. Could have Bill Withers version or the.
No, we're absolutely doing Will Smith.
We're doing the Will Smith version.
Uh-huh.
Right. Wait, you're actually going to play this?
No, we're not. I'm actually going to play it.
I was going to say. I don't think we can.
No,
Anyway.
it's Trey. It's Trey Smith. Smith, who ends up going to University of Arizona.
That's
that was
Will
the one
Smith's son?
That was the one in just the two of us. It was not Jaden Smith.
Well,
wow.
Learn something new every day. That's great stuff. Anyway, how's everybody doing today? You guys can't answer back. I'm asking the question rhetorically. We got a lot to get into. Temple is 2-0 after beating Maryland. They have a game at Buffalo this weekend. Looking forward to that road trip.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Well, it's fun to get out on the road. Not looking forward to the drive. You have a wedding to go to. You will not be there.
I might be making like a very similar bad drive though to Long Island. Long Island's the worst drive in the world.
Yes, it is.
And when I get there, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty close, and I'm still gonna have like an hour and a half to go 14 miles.
Where in Long Island are you going to?
It's all Long Island to me. I couldn't tell you.
We went up there. You know, our buddy Andrew Goldstein's been on the pod a couple of times. He got married in the Hamptons. We left at 1-ish on a Friday, whatever it was, a couple years ago. He's actually coming up on his anniversary in October. It took us close to 7 hours to get to our hotel. I was supposed to be at the rehearsal dinner. I had to call him. I thought we left in plenty of time. There's so much traffic getting up there on a Friday. It was nuts.
I'm not going until Saturday morning.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gonna be awful. But hey, looking forward to it. It's wedding season, baby.
Wedding season. Anyway, so again, Temple's playing at Buffalo this week. We got a lot of basketball recruiting stuff to get into. What we're probably going to do is just leave that for the mailbag so it's not repetitive. But we got a lot of basketball recruiting mailbag questions, so we will answer them. And some other mailbag stuff to get to as well. But we're going to recap the Maryland win here. Again, get a little bit more into the Buffalo Bulls, a team that Rod Carey is very familiar with because his second to last game at Northern Illinois beat Buffalo 30-29 in the MAC championship game. In that game, Northern Illinois scored 20 points in the last 15 minutes and 17 seconds. So a comeback win for them there. Same staff with Lance Leopold, some different players obviously. But let's go back to the Maryland game. I think we all kind of had an inkling, except you, that Temple was going to win this game.
I mean, if you want to start throwing shade, well, I'm going to throw some shade after you make a prediction today.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go back to it.
Well, obviously, a little bit more low scoring than we thought, but they got pressure on Josh Jackson, overcame some special teams mistakes, a lot of mailbag questions about that as well. But made plays when he needed to. Certainly Sean Bradley made plays when he needed to. Ifeanyi Maje looks, I'll just throw this out there, he looks like Temple's next great defensive tackle. I know it's a little early, but just the way he plays, and again, he's got to do it over a more consistent,
a longer
time frame, but really looks like he plays with a high motor, great technique, great attitude. He was a force in the game. Sean Bradley's a force in the game. Again, they overcome second safety was what it was. The low snap, the 7-yard punt, just, coverage mistakes. But your thoughts after Saturday?
Yeah, I would say exactly what Rod Carey said after the game, where he said, hey, we did everything we could to lose this game, and we still won this game, which I think that's actually more indicative of a good team than it is like a bad team finds a way to they give that game up. They don't make the 2 red zone stands. They end up losing by 10, and then it looks like, oh well, Maryland went on the road, avoided a bump, and Temple's 1-1 and looking for answers. I think the offense was better than the final score will look like. I think they moved the ball at times. They had over 400 yards of offense. Costly fumble by Jagger Gardner and a pretty bad interception. Well, it was okay. The first interception that came back was worse, but an interception by Anthony Russo killed 2 drives. Otherwise, you're probably looking at them putting up close to 30 points against Maryland. I know that Ifan Maje had a dominant game. He's up to 5 tackles for a loss and 3 sacks in the season. I would also caution it's been 2 games, so making projections like that it might be a little early, but who knows?
He's the next Jerome Brown.
Yeah, you never know. I probably know.
Yeah.
I probably know it's not Jerome Brown.
Yeah.
I think I'm more impressed just with that the amount of pressure they got in Jackson in general, let alone one player, because Quincy Roche was in the backfield all day. He only got 1 sack, but he's in the backfield a lot. Zach Mesday got there untouched a few times.
Right.
We kind of heard before the game from people that had watched Josh Jackson a little more than we had during his time at Virginia Tech and during the first 2 games in Maryland, that if you get pressure on this kid, it's anybody's guess as to what's going to happen. I think that's, unless you're Tom Brady or Drew Brees, I think that's the obvious way to get anybody quarterback.
Right, sure. Any quarterback wants to throw from a clean pocket, but it's a...
I don't think I've seen something that drastic in a while, because he looked absolutely... There were times when he would see the rush and get there and he would just freeze and just take the sack. He looked awful when they got pressure on him, and I think it was kind of Temple's defense's coming out party that, hey, despite the fact that you've lost some guys, you lost a second-round pick to the NFL, you lost a defensive lineman in the 7th round to the Cardinals, that this defense is still absolutely dominant. It might be one of, if not the best one in the conference.
Well, a couple other things to look at here. Again, well, maybe we'll save some of the special teams talk for the mailbag, because we got a couple of questions about it there. But a couple readers complained about Anthony Russo being a little off with his timing with his receivers, which I get. Still, there was a little bit of a mistake in Maryland's backfield on the Jaden Blue touchdown, but nonetheless,
he still threw a great ball there.
Yeah, threw a great ball. Then Jaden reverses his field, cuts up field. Otherwise, the numbers still look pretty good. You think a little bit of the mistiming, you just think that's some rust from Russo being out in most of August?
I think a little bit of it is rust. I mean, he hadn't practiced until the Bucknell game and then all that. But I think a lot of it is that it's still week 2. The bye week doesn't help when it comes to things like rust. Like he, instead of shaking off instead of right after the Bucknell game having a week 2 game against somebody, instead you have another week to kind of sit there. I think he was fine. I don't think it was his best game by any means. But like I said, I think he made a good throw against Blue. The touchdown pass to Yeboah. I actually thought live that pass was worse than it was. I thought live at the time that Yeboah had to make a ridiculous catch to get it. I think it was still a good catch. I think it's one that you expect your tight end to get, probably without the bobble. He just was a little ahead of him. But Russo also said, look, I got hit right after that throw. I didn't really know what happened. He just had to get it out there. I think it is a little bit of Russo still kind of shaking off some rust, but for the most part, I think he did a good job of Jaden Blue so far through 2 games has shown the ability to be an absolute weapon in space, and he didn't have to do anything too ridiculous there. He made a good throw, gets Blue in space, the safety slips, and then that's that. He did a good job of taking advantage of his weapons.
And then in the defensive backfield, some other positive signs. You're without Linwood Crump, and then of course they have the Ty Mason being suspended for the first half, comes back in the second half.
Ty Mason actually never played on defense in the second half.
Really?
He only played special teams.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but had a critical tackle on.
Yeah,
on
no,
special
and he
teams
plays
as well.
well on special teams. But yeah.
Harrison Hand has the interception to snuff out that first drive, and they still, again, obviously the pressure helped. Again, without really sending 4-man pressure, without really sending too many blitzes, if we saw them at all.
Right.
And another positive there, Harrison Hand makes a play. So, like what you see out of the defense in the first couple of weeks. Now, coming up against Buffalo this week, they're going to be facing more of a run-oriented attack. But
sure, before we get to that part, just talking about the defensive backfield, I think what really could have cost them that didn't cost them is not so much that they had to play Christian Braswell and Harrison Hand as much as they did. And Braswell played really well. I think he was targeted 6 times, gave up 0 passes, really looked the part in his first start. I think what could have hurt them is, Christian Braswell came up with pulled his hamstring or something during the first half, they would have been in a lot of trouble. You would have been really relying on Harrison Hand and Freddie Johnson, but more importantly, you wouldn't have really been able to play nickel with cornerbacks or anything like that, because after Freddie Johnson, it probably, from what I've heard, would have been Elijah Clark as kind of like the next cornerback up, and he's never really played. He played against Bucknell, but he's never played meaningful minutes. Instead, everybody stays healthy. Harrison Hand and Christian Braswell looked like Harrison Hand continues to look like he's going to be an NFL cornerback. The talent's always been there. There's a reason he was a 4-star cornerback. It seems like he's on his way to, and I don't think Temple fans want to hear this. I think if he continues to play at the level that he's been playing at, I think there's a chance he leaves early. I think it might end up being a 1 year and done for Harrison Hand. He goes as a junior, he enters the NFL draft, but we're quite a few games away from that. I think they did a good job against a team that when you looked at Maryland, if you buy into recruiting stars, you buy into that they were loaded across the board, and they, for the third time in the last 4 meetings against this team, looked like they are the more dominant program in this matchup.
Yeah, and again, Anthony McFarland got his yards, but obviously the key stops there were what will stand out most. McFarland got 132 yards and a touchdown on 26 carries. Again, looked the part of a guy that's probably going to be playing at the next level someday. But the way Sean Bradley shot through the gap on that first red zone stop, I mean, that second goal line stand of the game, second of 3 red zone stops. Of course, we've mentioned the 7-yard shanked punt by Adam Barry, but the way that Bradley hit the gap there was really impressive. The way they responded there was really impressive. Again, we'll talk about the special team stuff a little bit more in the mailbag, but we're going to play Rod Carey's press conference for you. We've mentioned this on previous podcasts. The Jeff Collins pressers used to be 25, 30-minute ragers.
Right.
Rod's are a little bit more in the 12 to 14-minute range. So this is from his Tuesday press conference. We'll play this for you. React to it on the other side. A couple of things to take out of this, and we'll respond to that.
Yeah, so obviously we're well into Buffalo now. It's Tuesday after practice. So all of my thoughts are there, but I will go back real quick for you guys to Maryland. Obviously, like I said after the game, we're happy with the win. We got in and really dove into what we need to get corrected, and there was plenty to get corrected off that film. And the guys have responded well. Made those corrections yesterday, and then also yesterday moved on to Buffalo. And then today, full ahead on Buffalo with those corrections. And the thing about corrections is you just got to go out and do them and practice them and practice them and practice them, and then you usually get the good result when you do it that way. And the guys have done a good job. Thought today was a good day of practice. School is in full force right now, and guys have papers to do, and some guys were up late. There were some tired people out there this morning on the practice field, but I liked the way that they pushed. I really did. It was very, very workmanlike, and was really impressed with still communicating, locked in, and pushing. And so I was really happy with that practice today, and then we'll get back to work, and we'll get back out there tomorrow. So with that, guys, we'll open it up for questions.
What's it like playing these guys now? I know it's different, but you
Yeah.
were in the conference championship game, came back on them. River team last year. How similar or different are they from last year?
Well, the core of their team is built the exact same. Coach Leopold does a great job. He understands you build from inside out. This is the best O&D line we have faced to date, and I have no problem saying that. They have 4 or 5 starters returning up front on offense, and their D-line is long, athletic on the edges, and inside very stout and strong. So he's been there now. I think this is his 5th, maybe his 6th year, but he's recruited that way, and you can see that on film over and over again. And their backs are dynamic. Obviously they lost 2 big wide receivers, a tight end, a quarterback. On offense, those guys are tough to replace. They were certainly dynamic players, and they lost what, in my estimation, was an outstanding middle linebacker last year to graduation. So some of those guys are tough to replace, but the guys that were playing out there are very skilled as well. So I look at it, and I see a really good football team, and I know that their record probably isn't what they want it to be at this point, but certainly they have our full attention in every way, shape, or form because how the film looks.
You talked about the corrections. How many of those were on special teams?
A lot. I mean, you got the one where it hits and hits Freddie and then they recover. Listen, the ball is oblong, right? It's going to bounce weird. There's a communication thing that we can probably get a little bit better there, but you never know where the ball is going to bounce when it hits the ground. The missed tackle was disappointing, especially when we had him. So doing some drills to do that. The other things with the snapper and with the punter are just really football IQ things, that they're both smart football players. They just need to relax and play. And we've showed them that. We've gone over that. We're doing some things different in practice as far as when we're doing things. Try to gain everyone's attention and get those things taught a little better. And so we're doing our part, they're doing their part, and it's just a matter of reps now.
You mentioned that LaFree was still sort of maybe in the mix to compete with Will for that spot.
Yeah, he is now this week. Yeah, he is now this week. He's still banged up a touch, but he's at a point where he feels like he can swing for field goals too. So yesterday and today, they've been competing a lot for that field goal job. So I don't have the numbers from today. I know yesterday the numbers were about even. I don't have the numbers from today yet.
Rod, when you come off a game over a ranked team, a Big Ten team, and everyone's telling you how good you are, as a coach, how do you balance like keeping your kids' heads kind of straight, knowing that they're going to hear all these compliments and everything?
Two things, and I just shared this with them, and I got no problem telling you guys. One, turn on the film of Buffalo. That's what you need to be paying attention to, right? They catch your attention on that, especially up front, like I said. And two, at Temple, we were not successful last year versus Buffalo. So I know it's new teams, new situations, but that's still there. So, I mean, if they don't have your attention, they should. And so that's what I told them.
Coach, Anthony Russo faced adversity against Maryland for quarter 3 interception. He came back with a touchdown to Kenny Yeboah. What was your takeaway from Russo's ability to step up through adversity?
Yeah, well, the one interception that got called back and then ended up not being an interception, that was the one that really, the decision making, I didn't like, and I told him, I said, we got to know, we can't think. The other one, as I looked at it on film, that was a great play by that linebacker. Like, he's going the right place with the ball, and yeah, you'd like the route to come under him, but linebacker made a heck of a play. He was going the right place with the ball. So that's the decision making on those two things, but I thought he stayed calm, cool, collected, and in the moment, knowing that not everything's going to go his way all the time, but he certainly stayed locked in, and that's what allowed us on that last drive to really go down the field.
I think we kind of got in the lost in the mix of special team struggles as Ty Mason, came out of nowhere, really saved that touchdown on the punt return.
Yeah.
How critical is it to have a player like him back for an entire game?
Yeah, well, he's going to add a lot to us on special teams. We missed him for sure in the first half, and he takes special teams and very personally, and doing a good job on defense too. So it's just nice to have him back in the mix and getting in the flow.
Isaiah, fair call at every punt. Does he need to be more aggressive, or
No, we told him to. We put a tag on it too, and he was doing exactly what he was coached to do, because after the first one, we didn't know what the punts were going to look like. They were going to spray it around a little bit, so then we had to peel off because we didn't want our guys to get hit in the back again with the ball, right? Well, and then they start kicking them straight. So it was a cat and mouse game, but in the end, Isaiah did a great job of catching the ball and making sure we had the ball after they were punting it, which was a huge part of the game.
Coach, I was wondering if you could talk about Ifan a little bit. He's going to get the National Defensive Player Award a little bit. Just maybe talk about what you've seen from him.
That's good for Ifan. I'm glad for him. That's first. I didn't know that. I think, like I told you after the game, someone asked me, what can you say about Ifan? I can say this is that, he beat out a really good player in Cromwell. Cromwell plays a lot for us, if you've noticed. He's on the field a lot for us, and he's a fifth-year senior. Cromwell's a leader on this team and everything, and Ifan beat him out. And so that competition there has just spurred both of them to be better, and Ifan is playing at a high level right now, which I'm extremely happy about. And he is too.
How much better has he gotten? When you first got here and you're looking at the roster and you're looking at what you have in him then to where he is now, where's the improvement been, or did he just stand out to you right away when you got here?
Well, I think we knew there was some God-given talent there, right? Where he's improved is how he prepares and how he practices. That's really put him, because I'm not surprised by this in games, because I see it every day in practice. I get that advantage, right? And I know you guys are, because you guys aren't in our practices, right? But I'm not surprised. He works, so that's probably the biggest difference is he learned how to work. He's learned how to practice, and that's showing up.
Injury updates from Saturday?
A little banged up with a couple guys, bumps and bruises. So we held a couple guys today. Held Ifan, Q, and Vince Picozzi, just with bumps and bruises, really. But they should be back and rolling tomorrow. Really, that's the only major update. There isn't anybody. Randall, thank you. Randall ran today. I was hoping he'd be further along than he was today. Just watching him run. I haven't talked to the docs about it, just my eye. I was hoping he's favoring it a little bit too. So it might go into next week. I hope it doesn't, but it might go into next week. We're going to run him again tomorrow, treat him. He's doing a great job of treating and rehabbing. He's just got to respond.
You've got a lot of mileage out of kind of a two-headed monster running back. Talk a little bit about that and how that helps the offense.
Well, in today's college football, I'd like to even see Dobbins earn his way back in there and on that thing too. But you have to have that because there's a lot of wear and tear on those guys, and I think that competition is really pushing those two to be better too. So really happy with Ray and really happy with Jagger, and like I said, I'd like to see Dobbins get in there a little bit more too. And Isaiah, we didn't put him in the backfield this week. That was for a couple different reasons, but we like to do that with him too and create that depth, right? Because just a lot of wear and tear, but really happy with how those two are progressing.
The special teams, and knowing Coach Foley, like you said, you kind of spread out the responsibilities, and they have an associate coordinator and an analyst. How do you kind of piece that together and stay away?
Just like that, we have full-time coaches that are in charge of each phase, and that's how I did it for most of my career. Instead of having a coordinator, even though the last couple of years at NIU I had a on-field coordinator. So that's nothing new. The meetings run the same as they did in the spring, as they did in years past, whether we had a coordinator or not. The meetings run the same. The information gets disseminated the same way. The practice gets the same way. So it's it's that end of it. We're getting everything done that we need to get done. Now we got to do a better job of getting the kids to understand it and execute it better. And that's on us.
Okay. Coach,
Yep.
just a real quick question. So you're dealing with a system of running backs compared to a single running back. As you guys currently play, what type of, from your standpoint, what type of coaching goes into having to monitor a lot of players from the backfield?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're probably in the majority as opposed to the minority in today's football period, NFL or college, that everybody does it by committee because of the wear and tear there. So there are specific plays that we like one of the guys to run over the other. There are specific personnel groupings we want them to do, specific skill sets that we want them to do. And then with all that being said, we like to monitor reps. Obviously, we would play a hot hand later. And Ray has been in there probably a little bit more with the all-around stuff. But all those factors go into it during the game. That's a constant communication thing.
Rod, you did mix on Saturday. You mixed in a lot of defensive line. You weren't afraid to go to Chris Banks, DeAndre Kelly early. How much might sound like a dumb question, but how crucial is that in keeping your starters fresh? And you guys were able to get a lot of pressure without really bringing a lot of bricks.
Yeah, and we've played a lot of total snaps defensively in the first two games. But when you take who's taken how many reps, really each person's played about one game, which is good, and that pays huge dividends as the season goes throughout the course of the year.
How much are you looking forward to playing your first away game of the season?
Yeah, good question. It's certainly something we addressed with the team. It's not their first road game. It's not my first road game, but it's our first road game together. So there's going to be a little different schedule to it than they're probably used to. And I'm probably, because we kind of came up with it together. And then we'll talk about it, discuss it, know what to expect. But for us, it's a business trip. And I enjoy the road personally. You kind of get away from, all the, and listen, family's great, and I always have a ton of family in too, and the guys do as well, but it's kind of good. You get away and you're separate. You're just together as a team and a staff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Does it help bond the players and?
I think so. Yeah, just time spent, right? Builds relationships. So kind of captive audiences, we're there, they're there. It's kind of builds the relationship.
Coach, I know they Illinois won last year by a point to Buffalo. What are some of the constants and some of the differences you expect to see against the Buffalo team this season?
Well, like I said earlier, the O-line and D-line are the constants that I see the through thread in their team. The schemes, obviously, their coordinators are the same and familiar with that, but really it comes down to the players, and they're good in every position. Just because I'm pointing out O and D-line doesn't mean that I don't think they're good in every position. They certainly are. It's just the O-line and D-line pop off the page to you there, and so those are the constants that we see as the through thread from last year to this year.
All right, so there's Rod Carey talking to reporters on Tuesday. Couple of injury notes to pass along. As he said there, Linwood Crump could be out a couple more weeks, so it looks like he's out this Saturday. Here's a game where you probably, even if you could play, maybe you rest him, and now he's up in the air maybe for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think up in the air is a good way to put it. From what we're hearing is this week's almost definitely a no, unless he's the fastest healing man in all time. Then, yeah, maybe next week against Georgia Tech against
with Randall,
old pal Jeff Collins.
Yeah, and then with Randall Jones, kind of a wait-and-see type of thing. Rod keeps saying I was hoping he'd be like a little bit further along. Right. When I asked about him on Monday in the American Athletic Conference football coaches teleconference, he said, John, I asked him what the specifics of the injury. He goes, I don't know.
Did he address you?
Yeah, he actually said, John,
Gregory,
let's sit down here. No, but he did say he's like it's sort of a hamstring thing. I don't know. He's very upfront about injuries. So we'll see if Randall Jones plays. Again, they certainly have been hurting for production at receivers. We've talked about with Jaden Blue playing really, really well through the first couple of games. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. Again, I don't know if Randall Jones playing makes or breaks them. Again, certain guys responded in the secondary, so you're going to be without Linwood on Saturday. One of the things we were talking about that this doesn't necessarily have to do with Rod Carey's press conference. One of the things they've been doing on Temple Football's Twitter that I think is pretty cool is they focus on a play. So a couple weeks ago, it was Gabe Infante talking about Ramon Davis's run.
Yeah.
This week,
screen.
I'm sorry, the screen, the 51-yarder, right?
Right.
This week
we haven't even talked about Ramon.
Yeah,
really
we'll get to him in a second.
Maryland as well.
Yes, two straight weeks of production there. Jagger Gardner doing pretty much what you need him to do as long as he doesn't fumble. But we'll talk about, I wanted to have you talk about that because I think if people have been following along on social media at home, I think it's pretty cool the way Knowles broke down that play that we talked about right before we played the Carey audio where Sean Bradley shoots through the gap to stop Anthony McFarland, and you said he talked about how Sam Franklin played a real key role in that.
Yeah, Knowles, I mean, he obviously gives credit to Sean Bradley, because Sean Bradley, I think, has the burst and the athleticism that few at that linebacker position in the American or even the Big Ten have to get through that gap. But Knowles kind of points out that one of maybe the unsung heroes in that play is, if you remember, Maryland has either a bigger wide receiver or a tight end split out wide, and they motion him closer to the line to run block. But they also actually have a fullback in that play. The fullback has two gaps there, and Sam Franklin's sole job, Knowles said, was basically to disrupt that fullback, was to garner his attention. And Franklin does a good job of getting there in time, going low on the fullback a little bit just to get him out. But he focuses on him, which frees up the gap for Sean Bradley to burst through there untouched, make that play on McFarland, save the game, be named the Senior Bowl Defensive Player of the Week. Mm-hmm. So 2 national honors for Temple this week, because Bradley gets Senior Bowl National Player of the Week, and then Majay gets the Bednarik Award National Player of the Week. So it kind of frees up Bradley and make that opportunity to make that highlight reel play to make a statement on the season so far comes as a result of Sam Franklin getting there in time and taking the full brunt of the fullback.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we'll touch on Ramon Davis really quickly before we move on to Buffalo and predictions and stuff. Do you think he'd be this good? I know he hasn't topped the century mark yet, but he's making people miss. Obviously scored twice in the opener, right?
Scored twice in the opener, yeah.
Has he exceeded your expectations so far?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think I expected a true freshman to come in. I think we all kind of cautioned he looked good against Bucknell. He looked faster than anybody kind of thought. I think coming in, which he's credited to the fact that he lost 15, 20 pounds or whatever it was. I think against Maryland, he looked even better.
Right.
I think he really showed the ability to make tough runs. He got outside at times. They really ran a lot to the left and up the middle, and I think Jagger looked good outside of that. Outside of that fumble, but I don't know how much that's a result of the offensive line really running blocking, or so much as Ramon has that natural talent, and it looks like they're going to try to get him 100, 150 carries this year, and you see what happens. So, no, I would say he's absolutely exceeded my expectations. I think nobody had ran on Maryland yet that year. Syracuse, Howard is what it is. It's an FCS program. They dominated. Syracuse couldn't run the ball against Maryland, and Temple went out there and you'll take 150 running yards every game for the rest of the season going forward.
Yeah, and Rod Carey, I believe, said it Monday. He said it there in this Tuesday presser. Still says I'd still like to see Kyle Dobbins fight through there and get some carries
you
too.
Need more depth, yeah.
So we'll
he also
see.
said they intentionally, for a number of reasons,
didn't put Isaiah in the
back
backfield.
There,
yeah. And they also said, I mean, we'll mention this in the mailbag too, that he was instructed to fair catch a lot of those punts too. So, so we'll see what happens there this weekend. But yeah, I mean, obviously special teams is a glaring thing that needs to be fixed. But all things considered, they're 2-0 heading into Buffalo this weekend. All right. So one of the things that Rod Carey keeps talking about, again, this Buffalo team, again, they're 1-2. Doesn't look good on paper, but they have been able to run the ball. He keeps talking about how they're big on both lines. They've got a veteran coach there in Lance Leopold. They've run the ball well with Kevin Marks and Jarrett Patterson. So Marks has 247 yards. He's averaging about 82.5 yards a game. Jarrett Patterson, 230 yards and a touchdown. So they've been able to run the ball pretty well. Right. But again, you lose a talented quarterback. You lose a couple of talented receivers. They're 1-2. But this is a team that Rod Carey knows pretty well, staff that he knows pretty well. Again, they beat him in the MAC championship game. Start with maybe some of the. Let's ask you this first, a negative question. If Temple were to lose this game Saturday, it's because of
like you
what?
predicted in the preseason.
I said they would lose at Buffalo?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I forget. All right, okay. Let's say what I predicted comes true, even though I don't think they're going to lose, but watch, they'll lose. If they lose Saturday, it's because of what?
They don't stop the run. They have those costly turnovers like they had against Maryland, but instead of their defense holding, they pay for them. I mean, you talk about the interception by Anthony Russo, you talk about the fumble by Jagger Gardner. We kind of focus them in hindsight as, well, those killed some offensive drives. It could have been a 14-point swing the other way or a 28-point swing the other way, and then that ends up being the difference against Maryland. I think with games like this where you're playing talent-wise for lack of a nicety, a inferior opponent on the road. The way you do this, the way you lose that game is you allow them to run the ball
and beat yourself,
and you beat yourself with turnovers. So I would say that if Marks and Patterson run the ball against them and they all of a sudden run for 220 yards, then yeah, maybe that's not great for Temple. I kind of agree. I don't think they're going to lose this game. This is a team that's put up 15 points a game against FBS opponents. Their stats are kind of inflated by a game against Robert Morris that they didn't exactly dominate. They kind of shot their load early. Can I say shot their load? I want to say shot their load. They shot their load early against Penn State in the first half and then got absolutely decimated. I was in Margate watching that game right next to Lucy behind me. Had some Penn State fans near me. But the second
I'm sure they were very humble and very measured in their assessment.
They were actually like, oh my God, like what's Franklin doing? And I said, relax, I think this game's going to be fine. And sure enough, this game was fine. Then they lost to a pretty mediocre Liberty team. I think the only way the Temple loses this game is if I don't think they're going to look past this team just because they lost this team last year.
Right.
There seems to be a lot of upperclassmen, senior leadership on this team. But I think they could lose this game if they are sloppy with the ball.
And Matt Myers, Buffalo's quarterback, would have to play much better than he's played again.
Right.
Really
he's
hasn't.
He's a true freshman.
Right, he's a true freshman. I believe 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he hasn't turned the ball over that much, but he's completed less than 50% of his passes. Again, a younger guy. I agree with you. If the special team stuff persists, if there's a situation where I know Rod said in his press conference, he's like, well, okay, obviously the missed tackle we got to correct. The situational kicking we got to correct. Not to go too far back, I'm realizing this now, thinking about what he said, that Jacob Lafree could potentially still be competing
for kicking.
Kicking there with Will Mobley, who pushed a very makeable field goal wide right.
I mean, what do I know about kicking? But, like, it never makes sense to me that something like you can kick kickoffs, but you can't kick field goals. like you're still using your groin. You're still
I
using
guess,
it.
and again, like we've talked about this before, they've talked about, I think Rod said, again, we're recording this on a Wednesday, and so in yesterday's press conference, he said, I just got out of practice, the numbers were about even. He said he finally thinks he can swing his leg now on kicks. Now, LaFree, he's pretty much acknowledged, has a stronger leg than Will. Will's done it at this level over a longer period of time, but yeah, again, it was one field goal attempt, but pushed it, a makeable field goal. It looks like Will might. That's what it looked like. He just pushed it. So we'll see what happens there. But with the one that hit Freddie Johnson that goes for the fumble, he's like, hey, there, the ball's oblong. That's going to happen sometimes, and we want to be careful of that. But sure, you could have a mistake like that happen, or you could have a missed tackle on a return. I agree with you. If something happens where they lose this game because they are uncharacteristically not tackling well, or Myers makes a play that you don't expect him to make, or again, they beat themselves.
Do you know what Temple and Buffalo are last and second to last in the nation in?
Turnover margin, one of them?
Net punting.
Okay.
Temple averages 26.4 net punt yards a punt, and Buffalo is a little bit above them, 27.27.
That 7-yarder didn't help.
No, so that's the thing.
That is
that's what we're talking about with the Majay stuff too. It's been 2 games,
right?
So when you have one bad punt like that, he's Adam Berry's had 10 punts this season.
Mm-hmm.
When one of them goes 7 yards, your numbers aren't going to look.
That is, did you say it? That is the worst kick I've ever seen.
Yeah, but did you see?
I hate to bury the kid, but
yeah, it's the worst punt. It's the worst kick I've ever seen. I mean, he just shanked it. But did you see somebody put on Twitter don't forget this was the worst day? It was actually in July, so it wasn't in reference to this, but this was the worst day ever for a punter. And it's a Temple punter from 1998, just getting they run fake plays and he gets blown up and he punts 15-yard punts.
Oh my
it's just
God,
full
who was their punter in 1998?
Well, he was not exactly praised on Twitter over the summer.
Crack out the media guide here.
No,
get one out of the filing cabinet. Anyway, did we go to predictions here?
We can predict if you want. Grahamson, his prediction too.
What is it?
Graham predicted 38-10.
38-10 Temple. What do you got?
Oh, real quick. Their punter was Dave Nickel, who also was their kicker.
Yes.
I think I'm pretty close to Graham, to be honest. I don't know if I'd go 38-10 just because they're 14-point favorites. I don't know if they're going to double that line. I would say they win this pretty soundly. A late Buffalo touchdown makes it look a little closer than it was. I'll say they win this 30-13.
I had 31-14.
Well, good thing I went first.
There you go.
That just looks like you're repeating me.
Maybe I am.
30-13. Yeah, I think they're going to be able to run the ball against this team. I think that if they can stop Maryland from running, they can probably stop Buffalo from running.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buffalo will put up some yards just because that's the way they want to do their offense. They don't want their freshman quarterback to really kind of take over a game. He hasn't had to yet. No slight against the University at Buffalo, not University of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
It's University at Buffalo. No slight against that prestigious university. I don't think they necessarily have a home field advantage.
No.
So I think this is a good opportunity for Temple to kind of galvanize itself on the road. If we look forward in the season, I think that win over Maryland sets you up to maybe start off a bit of a run to start off the season.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're all of a sudden 5-0 or something like that, then you're probably ranked. So that's a good start to the Rod Carey era. That's putting a lot of carts before the horses, but I think they take care of business here, go 3-0, and then turn their sights back to their old friend Jeff Collins.
Yeah, and again, I think we mentioned this before. I think they have 2 other things going for them. Number one, Rod's familiar with this program. Again, some of the players are different.
He's had back-to-back 1-point wins over them.
Yes, so he knows this. He knows this program, knows most of the talent pretty well, knows their coaching tendencies. And again, the players who were here last year, I hate to say it, it's so cliche, but there is a revenge factor there. Right. So they might be less likely to overlook them. We'll see. But again, they're not going to have much of a home field advantage.
Buffalo's lost a lot of guys.
Yes.
Tyree Johnson, who ended up with the Bills, and I think he was on the Chargers practice squad for a second.
He's out of the NFL right now, right?
He's out of the NFL now. And then they had Anthony Johnson, who we talked about this during
earlier this week. At this point last year, people this happens with a lot of guys. He could be a first rounder, second rounder, and then goes undrafted. But was still a very, very good college football player.
Yeah, no, and they kind of held in check for a while, right? And I think he ended up having one catch in the fourth. He had the touchdown in the fourth quarter, right? That kind of cost them. Outside of that, I mean, they had KJ Osborne transferred to Miami. They've had a lot of guys leave this team from last year. It's not the same team that went 10-4. It's not the same team that won the MAC East. It's not the same team that beat Temple on the road in week 2, the end of the Frank Newtile era at Temple. I think it's a completely different team. I think it's Lance Leopold's still a good coach, but I just think the talent difference is substantial here. Leopold had the quote during the MAC teleconference where he says Temple looks like a Big Ten team.
Yeah.
I don't know if he meant physically or just like the talent level, but yeah, I would be shocked if they lose this game.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the mailbag. And again, we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We haven't skipped basketball yet. We're going to talk about basketball and basketball recruiting in the mailbag because there are some basketball-centric questions here. So got some questions from the message boards and from Twitter. Again, appreciate you guys checking in on that. First question here, we'll get some football stuff into the mix first. First question comes from TU1834 from the message board. Scale of 1 to 10, how concerned should we be about Temple's turnover margin? Well, they're 120th in the nation after 2 weeks.
Sure. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if I can really say much beyond that. I mean, if they're still in this statistical category a week or two into conference play, then I'm a little bit more concerned with it.
I would agree. I mean, the Bucknell game is you're playing a very base defense. You're not really trying to be aggressive on those things. You're just trying to get through the game relatively injury-free. The Maryland game, the Harrison hand forces a turnover on the first drive, and then that's that. I think it doesn't help when a ball goes off Ray Johnson and that counts as a fumble, right? I think by design this defense isn't going to try to play. I don't think they're going to take as many chances maybe as Temple did the last couple of years, but I think they're still going to force plenty of turnovers. Anthony Russo, we would hope eventually kind of calms down a bit and maybe cuts down a little bit on his interceptions. I don't think in an ideal world they want him to throw 12 picks in the regular season, which is what he's on pace to do, but we'll see. I think it's worth noting. I don't think it's worth worrying about yet.
Mm-hmm. Next question comes from Cecil B. Owl from the message board. Rod Carey mentioned a battle for the kicker, but is there a battle for punter now between Barry and Cavalucci? Not that I know of. I can't. To be fair, it's funny. Not in his Monday conference call did anybody ask if Barry's job was in jeopardy. Nobody asked about it Tuesday. Doesn't mean that it couldn't be. Sure. I'd be lying if I said I watched a ton of Max Cavalucci over the summer in the open practices. I don't get the sense that Adam Barry's job is in trouble. Now, again, if he goes out and shanks a couple punts on Saturday up at Buffalo, maybe it is. Yeah, he's talked about, hey, situational football, you don't have to rush it there. I'm not saying he has like an NFL leg beyond that, but he has shown the ability to get off some good punts. And again, you mentioned playing in a junior college, not playing not playing in this type of environment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody that listens to this podcast or anybody in this room is going to think that it's like a step up to playing for Bama. Like, you're not playing for Alabama, you're not playing in the SEC, but it's a big step up from playing in front of 700 people at Independence Community College. I think Barry has the leg talent. Yeah, if he goes out and he hits a 6-yarder against Buffalo, then maybe you start warming up Cavalucci. I think they put a lot of faith in Barry when, instead of giving a scholarship to the freshman punter that they had last year, Connor Bowler, they decided to bring somebody in from the outside that they thought was a significant enough upgrade over Bowler that not only were they going to start him over Bowler, they were going to reward him a scholarship, which a lot of programs don't do for their punters, which Jeff Collins did not do for his punter last year over an incumbent guy. So I would be shocked if it's anybody other than Barry out there against Buffalo. I think it would take a couple more of those, like, it doesn't help. It also doesn't help when it's the intro of Monday Night Football, right, or Sunday Night Football, whatever it was, when they did the "Come On Man" and it's Adam Barry with the
that was tough.
So
that was tough.
It probably hasn't been a great week for Adam Barry. I think it's an opportunity to bounce back, but yeah, eyes are. It's the whole thing. Like, they don't notice the punter until they do something bad. Well, he did something bad, but I don't think they're at the point where he loses his job yet.
Next question comes from TU Owls 37. So now we're getting into some of the basketball stuff. Where does Temple go with their recruiting efforts now that Tosh Sweet, Mikhail Brown-Jones, and seemingly Lingrier III are off the board? We haven't gotten into the Lingrier stuff yet. That is a reference to Lingrier III announcing recently that he is reclassifying to the 2021 class. So we have been on an interesting roller coaster ride with this stuff, and fans have, we should say, where Lingrier doesn't appear to have Temple on his radar. Then decides he's going to take an official visit to Temple, which I'm told is still on as of now. So could take his official visit to Temple later on this month, but has made it known now that he plans to reclassify till 2021. People don't want to hear this, but he's a younger kid. maybe smart if he thinks he can play, gain more offers. We'll see how that actually plays out for him, but that's what he's referring to. And seemingly Lindgren, the third, are off the board. I know Obina is probably their number one option, but outside of him...
Lynn's not going anywhere, right? He's still playing at Roman for 2 more years.
Correct.
We have a 5-year guy at Roman.
Yeah.
Interesting. Might break some numbers at a vaunted school then.
Yeah, could. I know Obina is probably their number one option, but outside of him, who are we looking at for the second and third openings? And are those options going to be quote-unquote projects if Temple even looks to fill the third opening? How much or little do Strickland and Forrester, essentially being part of next year's class, affect the urgency McKee has to land a second or even third recruit this fall or spring? Let's start with that last point. I've talked to a lot of people about this. They, from what I can gather, they really want a shooter. And yes, they would like to get a big. I mean, if they can still get Obina and Akili Keelan, they would love to get him. Mm-hmm. He's deciding whether he wants to take an official visit to Cincinnati or not. VCU appears to be off the board. Again, as we just saw this past week, things are very fluid in recruiting. I don't know. Now Graham talked to Obina back after he took his official visit. We reached out to him a couple times recently. Haven't talked to him. I don't know that the kid's done a ton of media recently, but if you sweat out things with Cincinnati and he doesn't visit there, I mean, maybe you're in good shape. We'll see how things go. They would like to get him. I still think even if he comes in next year, I don't know how much he plays, because to address that part of your question, of course they want to fill out their roster with talent, but I think there's a tad less urgency there because you do have Jake Forrester. Mm-hmm. Now, there's whether he plays or not this year, whether he gets the waiver or doesn't play, he's going to play next year. You have Jake Forrester. You still have another year of Justin Hamilton, Dre Perry, and J.P. Mormon, and they're going to get a lot of minutes. So they could be, if they get a second player, a shooter at guard, be that Tristan Maxwell or an offer that they extended today to Quincy Adamakoya from Norcross High School down in Georgia. If they do get, if they don't get a big in this early period, they could look to the grad transfer market. I think there's a tad less sense of urgency there. It doesn't mean that they don't want Obina. They do. Everyone I've talked to about the kid's recruitment has said that. They still really like him. Whether they get him, I don't know. Where they go with the recruiting efforts, again, just mentioned that. So again, Tosh Sweet we talked about last week, or 2 weeks before that, or a week before that, committed to West Virginia, in case you missed that. Mikhail Brown-Jones did end up committing to VCU, as we expected. Lynn is reclassifying. So again, there's one piece of news we want to pass along. So again, you'll probably have heard this by now. If you follow on Twitter, a player named Rashawn Frederick from Thurl High School down in Atlanta had tweeted out that he got an offer from Temple. That is not the case. I can confirm that Aaron McKee has been down there this week. He did watch him play. I think they like him. They have not officially offered him yet. Doesn't mean that they won't at some point, but he does not have an offer yet. They did extend the offer to Quincy Adamakoya, so he has an offer. Now, he is currently a 2020 kid. There's talk that he could reclassify to the 2021 class. If he stays in the 2020 class, Temple might have a pretty good shot there. We'll see how things go. Again, they really like Tristan Maxwell, I've been told as well. Goes to North Mecklenburg High School in North Carolina. We haven't talked about him in a little while, but Temple has offered him. Georgia Tech is in the mix there. Ole Miss is in the mix there. Could be their biggest competition. Yes, he is the son of former Sixer Vernon Maxwell. Played with the Nuggets, the Rockets, played with the Sixers near the end of his career. Monty Ross is heading up his recruitment, but there's a connection there. Aaron knows him as well. So Tristan's a shooter. They would like to get a shooter in this class. They've got some athleticism at the point. They really like what Jaleel White can bring to the program. I think the coaches still think that even at 6'7", he can be a point guard. They like what they see in Josh Pierre-Louis. We have been told, and we'll talk to you about this now, there is some injury news to pass along. I've been told now by 2 people, Damian Dunn did break a bone in his foot. It's a fracture in his foot. They're hoping to have him back by the beginning of the season. Whether he's in game condition, he should be out of the boot before. And again, we know about this, looked into it, because players will post stuff on social media. So one of his teammates had posted something on social media, and he's in one of those scooters where he's in a boot and he's kind of moving himself along there. Looked into it. Yes, he does have a broken bone in his foot. Should be out of the boot before the season starts. It'll depend on what kind of game shape he's in. But I know the coaches are really, really high on him. I think at some point, whenever he does play, I think he'll be playing a significant amount of minutes this year. But those are the names to keep an eye on there. Quincy Adamakoya, Tristan Maxwell. Again, they're still in it with Obina and Achille Keelan. We'll see what happens there. But they really want to get a shooter as much as anything else. And I think in terms of getting a big, if you don't get Obina, you might hold out for a transfer, maybe somebody in the spring. They feel a tad less sense of urgency to get a big there because of what they have coming back. Next question comes from West Coast Al from the message board. What does Lynn Greer reclassifying to 2021 mean? Is Temple still in the mix for him? I know Stevie Mitchell is a priority for Aaron in 2021. Yes, they love Stevie Mitchell. A lot of programs love Stevie Mitchell. His recruitment has blown up. It will probably continue to blow up. Is Temple in the mix there? Absolutely. What does this mean for Temple with Lynn Greer? Well, again, we have not talked to Lynn directly. Now, Tom Magnuto, who does work for us, is also doing a lot of work for the Inquirer as well. Tom's talked to him. Mm-hmm. Again, people probably don't want to hear this. It could be a smart move for Lynn if he thinks that he can improve and if he thinks that he can rebound in rankings or see what he gets next year. Maybe it pays off for him. If his recruitment kind of stays in the same place, sure, Temple will have, they could have as many as 5 or 6 scholarships available for next year. Again, as of now, he is still set to take his official visit. You can take one in your junior year, you can take one in your senior year. So, but obviously it's a curveball. So we went from hearing that a lot of his other offers had dried up, Temple could be the most viable landing spot for him, to now he's reclassifying. So what it means is you're not getting him in 2020. Are you getting him in 2021? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd find that doubtful. I think when you had the opportunity to go to your father's alma mater and you decide to reclassify after scheduling an official visit, that's probably an indication that Temple was not his ideal landing spot.
Right.
Despite it always being one of the most likely landing spots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I from what I've been told, I think Temple was always the stance has always been, hey, we'd like to have you here, but there are also some other players that they like at that position. Again, well, it'll be interesting to follow, but this is now, you're talking about a kid who has gone to Roman Catholic, went to Oak Hill, whatever happened at Oak Hill, didn't like what he saw at Oak Hill. Oak Hill was never short on talent down there. Comes back to Roman, had a nice junior season, couldn't play in the state playoffs because of the transfer situation. Again, I think if you're looking at Lynn, if you've seen him play before, he's skilled. He looks the part. I don't know how tough he is just yet. I think he's got some stuff to work on there, but still a very skilled player. We'll see if he takes the visit, but again, now this is a longer journey. But again, I certainly wouldn't bank on it. So again, another sort of odd recruitment involving a legacy player, different set of circumstances. But so wouldn't exactly count on that. We'll see how it goes. Next question comes from Esther Boyer on the message board. Why hasn't Temple gotten involved with Rasul Diggins? I haven't seen Rasul Diggins play live. Obviously, he's good enough to get a Wake Forest offer. He's gotten some good offers. Some people I talk to are really high on him. Some people I have talked to say that some programs are still evaluating him. I think, again, we cannot, just to explain to people who are listening to this podcast, we cannot talk to coaches on the record and say, what do you think of this player? What do you think of that player? They can only talk about players when they have signed their national letter of intent. So I can only assume that Temple is still kind of just evaluating this kid. I'm sure that people listening at home might say, okay, he's good enough to get an offer from Wake Forest, and Temple hasn't evaluated him. This happens sometimes with players and programs. Some guys like a player more than others. Certainly not a shot at Rasul Diggins. Again, he's got some good offers, and he's a very solid player, but I can only assume that that's what it means. They're still kind of evaluating him. So
obviously they liked him enough to have him out on campus. But
sure. Yeah.
I think I wouldn't agree with hasn't gotten involved, but I think they are involved with him.
Yeah.
It's just, they haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah, but a fair question. I'd be wondering the same thing if I were a fan, but that's what I've gathered after talking to some people. A few more questions here around things out. These are all from Twitter. Next one comes from @Mr. Stowe. You keep saying asses in the seats. This is referring to, on our message boards lately, I've been saying, I'll just finish the question. I'll get to it. You keep saying asses in the seats, and while this is true, how are the eyes on the TV numbers doing? So, some of the fans here, and they're entitled to their opinion, say, oh, the local press needs to get behind the program. Well, I think the local press has written plenty of positive stories about Temple, and no matter how many times I talk to people and saying, like, you have to pay attention to readership surveys and what your readers like. You're going to cover a lot of Penn State because Penn State's in the Big Ten. They get people to games. They're a national program. Right. Mike Jensen writes a really positive piece, and Mike has, yes, I know people say, oh, he's pointing out attendance stuff. Mike's written plenty of positive stuff about Temple.
T-shirt today.
Yeah, the T-shirt's great.
Fantastic T-shirt.
Yeah, they got that made quickly. A quick turnaround there.
I mean, they didn't actually physically make it yet. They just got it made on the website.
I know. You can Photoshop
somebody
it. Just
seems
put it up there.
stressing.
I know. It'd be great. Betsy Ross put it together. Anyway, because Mike was like honored, blessed to be mentioned there. But Mike Jensen, literally, and this is what I like about Mike. He can be conversational with his writing. Does his college stuff and says, hey, I was talking to a longtime Temple fan, and the guy just said to me, hey, essentially like, more people need to get to games, and only if people could be motivated to get there. And Mike was like, yeah, he's right. And the headline of the story was, have you noticed that Temple football is pretty good? So I, really not joking around with people, said, oh, okay, so I guess this means that we can expect the lower bowl to be full against Georgia Tech. So I have been saying, yeah, people just need to go to games. I think that they should have had the lower bowl full against Maryland. I know they announced a crowd of more than 30,000. Do I think they got 30,000? Not quite, but a good crowd.
Yeah, I think that was probably the closest thing to an accurate attendance they've had.
Yeah, I think it's a sin that more people don't go to games. I get it. It's a pro sports town. They're never going to be as into Temple football as they are with the Eagles, obviously. But so that is what that is in reference to, long story short. How are the eyes on the TV numbers doing? Well, it's 2 weeks into the season. You play Bucknell in the first game. I do not have...
SportsMediaWatch.com has no data on it.
Yeah.
Which is, fine, I'm sure. Like Syracuse, Maryland the week before it had 1.28 million. It's probably less than that, but CBS Sportsnet is a weird network too.
Yeah.
Because it's not on everybody's package.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on like ESPN, like where it's a straight thing. But no, I don't have any hard data on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so 1 week in against an FBS opponent there, I'll be interested to see what the numbers are like for Georgia Tech. Certainly when they play UCF, but. Generally speaking, and we've talked about this before, for a Group of 5 program, especially when they play in bowl games and conference championship games, Temple has done well when it comes to TV ratings. Whether it's the media market they're in, whether it's the quality product they're putting on the field. I get the question there. I think Temple's TV numbers, generally speaking, have been pretty good for the type of college football program that they are. I just think I will say, and anybody could say this, I think it's critically important for fans to go to games. Again, what else do you want? They win. They graduate their players. They send players to the NFL. At some point, fans have got to start going in more numbers instead of being so fickle. Again, couldn't you see if they somehow lose Saturday against Buffalo? I don't care if Jeff Collins is coming to town. We're not. I'm not.
To be honest, I'm not sure how much. I was talking to somebody about this. I'm not sure how much they're going to get against Georgia Tech, regardless. Just because I don't know if Joe, what was the old Sarah Palin thing? Joe Sixpack. Whatever it was, or Joe the Plumber, whatever it is. I don't know if the casual...
really cares about the Jeff Collins storyline.
I don't even think they know.
No.
I think the very, very casual Temple fan doesn't know that Jeff Collins went to Georgia Tech. They don't know that Georgia Tech's coming in. I think Maryland was a better situation because Maryland traveled. They recognized that they played Maryland last year. It's a regional, so we probably know people that went to Maryland. Do you know anybody with Georgia Tech? I do. I have a buddy I went to college with, went to grad school there. But other than that, there's no natural rivalry there or anything like that. I think the common fan, who is the difference between your normal crowd and you hoping that you fill the lower bowl or you hoping you get 40,000, doesn't know that sort of thing.
Right. But the Temple fan base needs to turn out for this game. There's no reason why they can't fill the lower bowl for that game.
You literally just said right, but they should do it anyway. You acknowledged my points and then said
wait, let me back up. Are you talking about the casual Philadelphia fan or are you talking about the casual Temple fan?
I'm talking about the casual Temple fan.
Oh, okay. All right, then I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about
the casual Temple fan who I identify as I'm a fan of Temple football, but not the people we're talking to on this podcast, not the people we're subscribing to.
Gotcha.
Or
okay.
Subscribing
all right,
to
yeah,
I don't know if
you.
they know the storyline.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, if they don't know the storyline, then that's...
Think about, your neighbor who's 62 years old is Temple's off to a 3-0 start, assuming they beat Buffalo. Good for them. He's not saying Jeff Collins is coming. I gotta get there and paint myself red and flip that guy the bird because he left to the ACC. I think they're just saying.
Sounds like a pretty nice guy.
I gotta watch the game.
Nice inflection.
Did you ever see the Always Sunny episode where they moved to the suburbs?
I have not.
And it's a neighbor. He's some weather, huh? Looks like it's gonna storm.
Guy. I legitimately love that show. It's just one I've been lazy about.
That guy, but he's talking about Temple football.
I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Anyway, a couple more questions to get to here. At Zach McClellan on Twitter,
No.
Are the special teams issues
It's
at all
not
related
his
to?
Twitter handle. At Z McClellan.
Oh,
You
sorry.
gotta give him credit in case people want to follow him after the question.
Yeah, I don't know if his name's Zach. I don't know why I said that. I promise you I don't know this guy. I don't think I do.
Zenith.
At
Zenith.
Z McClellan. Sorry.
McClellan.
At Z McClellan. If that is your name,
Did
Z.
you ever have a Zenith TV? My first TV ever was a Zenith.
I'm sure it was, yeah. I would have to imagine it was. And I'm older than you, so it probably was a Zenith.
Zenith.
Or a Panasonic.
Yeah.
Maybe. Safe guess. Okay, at Z McClellan on Twitter. Are the special teams issues at all related to the loss of Coach Foley? Maryland game aside, it seems like schemes and blocking for returns is taking a step back. Again, fair question. We mentioned this earlier in the podcast. You heard it in what Rod Carey said. He said that Isaiah Wright was instructed to fair catch those punts.
Right.
And again, I don't know if he was implying there that they were scared off about like the trajectory of them. They didn't want to turn the ball over again. I know it seems, generally speaking, and I'm not watching film with these guys, obviously, it does seem, generally speaking, like they've been less aggressive in terms of going after kicks. I don't know if that changes this week, but again, the missed tackle is a coaching thing, and Rod Carey went over this.
Right.
Missed tackle can be a coaching and execution thing. Now they blow up the fake field goal attempt. Well, we didn't know until we went back in. We're not in Mike Loxley's press conference. Now, Mike Loxley, you pointed out to me, we were in the press box. You said they felt like they had to fake it there because their kicker was hurt.
Yeah, apparently they're saying he hurt his groin or hurt something on their missed field goal. He's saying they were injured at that point, which I don't. There was nobody else that could kick field goals or kick extra points, but whatever it might be. They felt injury. I have a theory.
I like your theories.
I have a theory. So, like, one of the selling points,
one.
one of the selling points of Rod Carey has always been that he coached really well in those big, like, out of conference games. Right? I think he was 4-2 against the Big Ten. He went into Provo and beat BYU. Is that where they play? Provo?
Yeah, I believe so.
So like he's won some of those big games. When you look back at them, they were always pretty conservative. Like I think he put up 7 points against BYU and beat BYU. I think in games like this or games like that where they're playing against a team that's from a Power 5 conference and probably it's better thing, I think they intentionally go pretty conservative. I don't think we noticed until that throw against Jaden Blue, they were doing a lot of horizontal routes. Like they were playing a pretty conservative offense. I think that's another example of that where I think it's a little bit reacting to what Maryland did, but I think for the most part it was just like, just take the extra point or just take the fair catch. We'll grind out a thing here. We'll choose some clock. We'll do this, and that's how you beat a team like Maryland. If it hadn't worked, if they had lost because they had given up those things, and people would be questioning things like that, why would you limit your All-American punt returner from doing things like that? But because they won, I think they're fine with it. I think that was part of the plan.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, again, like to get back to the crux of his questions. To the loss of they related to the loss of Coach Foley. Look, Ed Foley had been at Temple for a long time, took pride in coaching special teams, took pride in coaching guys like Sharif Finch to, like Sharif was good at blocking kicks. And again, I'm sure, and again, I was just saying this before, Rod literally broke down, like, could we work on things better situationally? Yes. We all have to get better at this. I think there are some things that they have control over and some things that they don't have control over. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. You have a snapper that, for the most part, snapped the ball just fine last year. Right. Uncorks a low snap that
bounced off though.
Should Barry have been able to handle that snap? Maybe. I guess that's kind of debatable. But yes, it absolutely has to get cleaned up. I know it's quite naturally the thing. It's like, Ed Foley's gone.
Sure.
How do you know? Now, if Ed Foley's still here, does Adam Barry still shank that? He literally, the snap got to him, literally puts the ball off the side of his foot. That could have happened if Ed Foley was here.
Right.
Will Mobley pushing the ball right now that Aaron Bumeria is up at Boston College. That could happen even if Ed Foley's still here. Could they be better in coverage? Could they be better in blocking? Sure, they absolutely could. I understand it's the popular opinion to have. I want to kind of see this play out a little bit more before I say, yeah, they're in a much worse place now that Ed Foley's not your special teams
I think
coach.
it's the same scenario as when you talked about the defense, which is they probably weren't going to do anything. When he talked specifically about schemes and blocking for returns, I don't think they were going to do anything particularly unique against Bucknell.
Right.
And I think they wanted to go pretty conservative against Maryland. I think the rest of the season will be more of an indication of that. It's 2 weeks. Stats are going to look bad when you have bad scenarios.
Well, and again, like you said, like they could end up they couldn't end up winning Saturday by playing a relatively conservative game
so
plan too. Because again, you know the program, you know the coach is there, and you really shouldn't have to uncork a bunch of wild plays on a lot of deep stuff out of your playbook on either side of the ball to beat this team.
Right. So I think it's the same thing. Like, I wouldn't even say, God, I mean, Georgia Tech lost to the Citadel. They might be just as bad too. So like, I don't think you'll really have an indication of what this team can do in a lot of facets of the game until they play Memphis and they play UCF and they go down to Orlando and see if they can finally win a regular season game in Florida and see what happens there.
Yeah.
So it's not the question anybody wants to answer, anybody wants to hear, but I think it's a lot of wait and see.
Yeah, just checking Twitter here to see if anything else came in. One last question that I see here, and this was DM'd to us from Mark. I should know how to pronounce your last name. Mark's a good fan, lives out in the Chicago area. Mark Jamil1 on Twitter. Do you think this is essentially the same thing? Do you think the special team struggles evident during the Maryland game are related to the departure of Ed Foley? Special teams has been a strong suit for us over the last few years, and it was disappointing to see us struggle in this area of the game. Keep up the great work, guys. Again, same thing. Got to see how this plays out. Those two questions probably could have been combined into one there, but wanted to mention Mark by name there.
We have. Did you look at the football team? We have a lot of questions in the football board.
Where I only saw a couple there. Did we just get more?
There's been a bunch since 2:30.
How did I miss the other ones?
There's like 5 questions on there.
All right, let's read them off.
Okay. I thought we were going to edit this out, but yeah, let's do it. We're going live from Green Street Owl. He has 2 questions.
Oh, I did see that one earlier. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Green Street Owl.
Temple will be undefeated and ranked heading into homecoming versus Memphis. True or false, and why? So let's bring up the schedule. So obviously they play Buffalo. And they play Georgia Tech at home. Then they go
then it's ECU.
to ECU, right? Who I know when we talked to the Colin earlier, he said, hey, I think there was a lot of off-season buzz about whether or not ECU would finally be turning the corner. I think it's very clearly year 1 of their rebuild, and they looked still like that soft ECU team that Colin talked about. I'm going to say yes. I think, and this, again, I thought they would lose against Maryland. I think with that in mind, that they are going to be 5-0 going against Memphis on October 12th.
I would agree. And he says will they be 5-0 and why?
He's just saying true or false and why. I think why because the schedule shapes out that way. I think Memphis was their hardest game before Memphis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think Maryland was their hardest game before Memphis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this was kind of, and again, we'll see. It'll be fun to see where Maryland goes from here. I don't think they'll be a bad team, but yeah, this was the game that we kind of looked at on the schedule and said, if you get past this one, this will be kind of interesting. Yeah, I think they will be, again, as you said, because of the way the schedule plays out, but also, and again, I am not trying to downplay what you saw in special teams. Obviously, they have to get that stuff corrected. If not, it's going to bite them eventually.
Sure.
But, I mean, you really have to be impressed with what Jeff Knowles has done so far. I mean, he's, again, people, I'm sure at this point last year, we're not talking about Jeff Knowles. He's the defensive coordinator at Northern Illinois. Nobody's really talking about him. I mean, I think he's a guy that if he continues to do the job that he does here, he's a guy that I think people are going to hate hearing this. He's a guy that you'll eventually have to replace on this staff. I think somebody's going to come along and pluck him. He's a very good defensive coordinator. Yes, he's got talent to work with, but they were awfully, awfully impressive on Saturday. I know I'm stating the obvious there, but when you're put in that situation, even if something breaks down up front, Anthony McFarland's really good, and he got his yards against you, but just scheme-wise...
If they had given up a touchdown on one of those two instead of
you say, hey, what can you do?
Yeah, they put the offense, special teams put him in a really bad spot. Defense played really well, and they just eventually they went to the wall too many times. Instead, they were that good and they won the game.
Yeah, and for my why part of it, a big part of it is, you think they can be 5-0 just because of their defense being able to carry the day. That's not to downplay what Anthony Russo has done. Yes, he's had a couple of turnovers, but yeah, I think
the other part of that is they're going to be undefeated and ranked. Do you think they're ranked after 5-0? They're 34th right now.
I mean, the cop-out answer is you just have to see how the fringe 20 to 25 teams do, but yes, I'm going to say, and I'm trying to get into the minds of coaches and writers who do the voting, I'm going to say yes, because at that point, I think if UCF keeps winning and Temple's 5-0, the conversation will be like, college football's shifting a little bit. These group of 5 teams are really good. Memphis. Yes, and Memphis, So, yeah, I think so.
I would agree. I think Maryland win's going to pay dividends. I don't think Maryland's all of a sudden going to go 4-8. I think that's a team that's going to end up making a bowl of the Big Ten, so that'll be an impressive win. Next question from Green Street Al. After a full spring and now a couple of games, what are some of the positive differences between covering Carey's team and the Money Down Man?
Yeah, I don't know how I missed seeing this. I saw this earlier in the day. I apologize.
You're not what you would call good at your job.
Yeah, I'm having an off day.
Yeah,
I got to do better. I got to put myself in a better position to make plays and produce mailbag questions. Yeah.
Positive differences between covering Carey's team, and covering Colin.
I mean, I think we've talked about this a few times already. And again, I'm not really trying to. We joke about it. Jeff Collins always treated us well. Right. Did a good enough job at Temple to get the Georgia Tech job, so we had to be doing plenty of things right. The biggest thing, I think, and we've talked about it before, is so far Rod and his staff have been pretty straightforward, pretty fair with the media. Not that Jeff wasn't, but Jeff went from 0 to 60 in terms of like we don't talk about injuries to like being a little bit more reserved to like again just like branding. I'm going to talk about this, and after a while you're like, all right, wake me up when you're going to talk about something that we're going to write about. Rod's been pretty fair, pretty straightforward. Again, I got a big chuckle out of before the opener when somebody said, "Are you going to tell us who's starting?" He's like, "No, I'll tell Rich tomorrow, and then he'll tell you guys." Does that work out well? Even if Rod Carey had just said, "Listen, yes, we're obviously going to know who's going to start, but I'm really not going to talk about before the game." Be like, "All right, he's a coach, fair enough. He's entitled to that." And again, I joked about it earlier when I asked him on Monday's call what was going on with Randall Jones. He's like, "I don't know, John. It's got a fancy name, might be a hamstring or something like that." I think he's been pretty down to earth and pretty straightforward with things. They gave us 6 completely wide open practices to cover in the preseason. Again, every coach, every staff is capable of human moments where like they might do something or say something to tweak you or tweak a writer where you're like, well, that was annoying as hell. But I mean, everybody can be like that. I think that's been the most refreshing change, that there's a little bit more straightforwardness and not as much gamesmanship that you see through. After a while, you kind of got sick of that. That's what stands out to me.
Yeah, I would agree. The transparency and just being able to get information when you need it. I think the thing that'll be interesting to watch with that particular aspect is Rod Carey hasn't lost yet.
Right, that's the thing.
He hasn't had to deal with. They haven't laid an egg yet. They haven't gone on the road against a team they should be and lost by 15.
Yeah.
So I would hope that you kind of know what to expect a little more from Rod Carey, just because he was a head coach for 6 years before this. He's had to deal with losses before. He's had to deal with criticism before. But right now, everything with covering Rod Carey's team has been pretty good. Not that this is a direct reflection of Rod Carey, but it's a reflection around the administration and staff around him. I really like what they're doing with social media, with football. Jeff Collins' staff was obviously very social media oriented, but they never did anything like the play breakdown like the football staff has done. They've added a couple more wrinkles to their off-the-field presence that I enjoy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Instead of the hype video stuff, it's great. It serves a purpose because we know this, they're doing that to market the program to recruits as well. But yeah, they've been cool to cover before. Again, let's see what happens when they're facing some live bullets and they lose a tough game. But again, coaches are entitled to...
I'll tell you right now, Rod Carey's not going to go 14-0. They're going to lose a game at some point
breaking
this year.
news.
They're going to lose a game at some point this year.
Graham, put in the breaking Al noise again. Or let's just get the Colin. I actually like the Colin Thompson noise again.
I couldn't do it justice.
Yeah.
Megs lately has been trying to do, the stereotypical podcast noise, like the Rasta horn.
Yeah.
Like, she's been, impersonating that. I'm like, dear God, please stop doing that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Because it took her, she did 15 times before I realized what she was impersonating. I was like,
oh, really?
That's a very bad impression.
At least I appreciate that.
She's trying. Maybe it was G-Baby impersonating. Next question is from 18Al1. 18Al1? 1-800-Al1?
1-800-AL1.
Is this the deepest Temple team they've ever had? After watching our secondary step up without 2 starters, Jaden Blue break out, and Ifan beat out Karamo, it seems like we have quality depth all over the field, especially on defense.
Yeah, deepest team Temple's ever had, no. I'm not trying to downplay the depth that they have. But, it's a fun thing to debate. It's one of those subjective things. It's funny. I work here full time at Temple as well. I teach a couple classes here. I manage the student media outlets, and one of the students that I work with, obviously this is back in 2008 when they lose the Drew Willie, Naaman Roosevelt game.
The Hail Mary.
And I was like, he's like, yeah, I've heard about that a little bit. And we're watching that. I was like, look it up. And the pass he throws, and you look like there was some talent on the field there.
Sure. Bruce Francis.
Even just like Jamal Schulter, a guy that was on that team who never ended up. He was the guy who left a year early, right?
I think what happened, and if someone's going to correct me on this, I think Jamal Schulter signed with an agent and tried hoping that nobody would catch him, and then they caught him, and then he just said, well, okay, I'm declaring.
Yeah.
And then didn't go anywhere.
I mean, they had some talent on that team, and that was in 08, a year before they went to a bowl game. I mean, they've had a lot of talent in this program. I will agree that
this year's Temple team would beat the 2008 Temple team by 35 points.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if they beat them by 35.
35 points.
That would be a fun game to watch because that was
two
before
completely different styles of football.
Sure. There was some toughness to that team. You had some guys on that team, like an emerging Mo Wilkerson, even some of those linebackers were tough.
That's before all those players took the next
step. Sure. No, absolutely. I still cannot believe that ball dropped in there. That was something else to watch. But I will agree. Right now, you'd have to like the depth on the defensive line. I know he hasn't really made any noticeable plays, but the fact that DeAndre Kelly's getting the snaps that he's getting, I didn't think that would be the case. I mean, you pointed out again, we were up in the press box saying, man, he's playing some of his backups early on in the game. It helps that Karamo Diabate is essentially a backup. Again, a lot of these guys they'll split up the reps and everything, but there's depth on the defensive line. There's you like your linebackers. Obviously, you had some guys step up in the secondary. So there's depth there. Is it the deepest team they've ever had? No.
No, I'd look back at some of those 2015, 2016 teams when you look back, and a lot of those guys made it to the NFL, and a lot of those guys who were barely playing. To kind of give credit to your previous point, which I don't like to do, you look at somebody like Brian Sanford back in those teams,
which
right?
I don't like to do.
He didn't even start. Brian Sanford didn't even start for Temple towards the end of his career. He started as sophomore, junior, and then
he ends up having a cup of coffee in the
NFL.
NFL.
He had a couple years in the NFL. I think 2015, 2016 was probably one of the more of those deeper teams. I think you have to be pretty happy right now if you're Temple, because coming into this season, you thought, okay, what are the 3 question marks as far as depth are concerned? You've answered 2 of them. Running back, you were concerned about. It looks like they're going to be able to try to get by with Ramon Davis and Jagger Gardner and not have that be a liability whatsoever. And then defensive line, you worried about the depth. Well, like you talked about, now you have Karamo playing 30 snaps, 35 snaps a game. You have guys like Chris Banks, as a redshirt freshman, playing a lot alongside Karamo.
Which is a good sign.
Yeah, that's a good sign for the future, in addition to this year. And then you're still rotating in guys like DeAndre Kelly, Daniel Levine, Arnold Obakele. Leighton Jordan even played a couple meaningful snaps against Maryland. So I think there's more depth there than you expected. The only thing that's still a question mark is depth is that next tier of offensive linemen. Is it somebody like Victor Stoffel, who I think they won a red shirt, or is it a JUCO guy like J.D. Gomez or Joseph Hooper? But I think they're still, knock on wood, if you're a Temple fan, I think you're still a little fearful of what would happen if somebody went down in the offensive line.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, that's kind of been it's kind of the concern for most programs, unless you're really loaded, but it's a concern all the time. But yeah, definitely a fair point. And then this last question is from Rockland Dow, right? Again,
what
I don't know
are you looking at?
I don't know how I missed these before. So
okay. No, you're right on this one, but he has a couple questions in that question.
You want to read this?
No, you can go ahead.
So Rockland Dow from the message board says, what do you expect to see from Anthony Russo in order for the Buffalo game to be his first without an interception? So we'll answer that one first. Just them establishing the run game and him. What do you expect to see from Anthony Russo in order for the Buffalo? And anything I say here is going to sound super general. If they can establish the run even more, not that they haven't done that in the first 2 games, where he can just stay away from trying to just muscle that one throw in there where he says, I'm going to zip this one in here because I have the arm talent to do it.
Right.
I think if they can really run the ball early, get up early, and he can blend in, feels like he doesn't have to, if they're playing from behind, I guess nothing should surprise us. I'm not to say they couldn't play from behind Saturday, but as long as they can establish the run to set things up in the past where he doesn't have to take too many risks, he should be fine. That's the next step that he needs to take, and anybody could say that, which is just trying to not muscle that one throw in there to say, let me see what I can get away with.
I'd agree. I also think it helps that he's going up against 2 pretty mediocre quarterbacks in Devon Russell and April Washington. So the Temple's wide receivers we talked about this last week. I said Temple's wide receivers are better than Maryland's cornerbacks. Temple's wide receivers are better than Buffalo's cornerbacks. So you would hope that maybe, he kind of calms down, takes some rust off, and then maybe goes through turnover free.
Yeah, second question from Rocco now. The offense appeared to do a significant amount of pre-snap shifting in the Maryland game. What are your thoughts about its effectiveness? My answer to this, and I think you're probably going to, I shouldn't presume that you're going to say the same thing, is
I'll presume it.
I don't know how much, not that you won't see that, but you alluded to it earlier, like, was it effective? Well, I mean, they won.
Sure.
The players have generally been saying, I mean, Anthony said this a lot after the Bucknell game, that that they feel like signals are coming in better from this staff, and that there's been more of a smooth transition there. They're 2-0, so it had to do something. How often they're going to be doing that, depending on the week, we'll see.
I think they're going to do it and add another wrinkle in. I think the one thing you haven't seen yet is that jet sweep component, which we saw a lot in practice. We saw them kind of set up for it on misdirections a little bit against Maryland. I think eventually you're going to see Jaden Blue or Isaiah Wright or even a guy like Jeremy Jennings take snaps from there. And then if that starts working, then they're going to start doing those movements even more.
Mm-hmm. Finally,
but again, this goes back to my theory, which not really a theory. It's not I don't have like a tinfoil hat on my head trying to convince you of this. You don't do that against Maryland if you're trying to go ultra conservative and really just like grind out a win against a Power 5 opponent.
Yeah,
you do that in games like this.
Yeah. Final question here, and we talked about this already. Finally, please confirm that Drew Willie, Naaman, and Roosevelt have used up their eligibility. We were there in person in 2008 watching all the Buffalo fans leaving the stadium thinking that Temple had won when ... Yes, they have used up their eligibility. I was up there covering that game. What a fun road trip that was. I remember Mike. That was pre-Kyle.
It was
pre-Kyle Gauss. How old were you in 2008?
2008, I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
I was delivering a lot of pizzas and smoking a lot of Marlboro Reds in downtown Pennsylvania. It was the best job I've ever had.
Suburban cowboy.
Wish I could still just live that lifestyle where you're 19 years old and you just eat whatever you want, you smoke whatever you want, you live your entire life, and you just deliver pizzas.
You'd want that life
I'm
back?
having a kid in January.
Yeah, so answer this question correctly. That was a hell of a road trip. I remember we left late. Well, I remember we took a couple of, it was me and Mike Mudrick. Those of you who've been reading Owl Scoop for a long time remember Mike Mudrick, our former assistant editor.
Kyle 1.0.
Kyle 1.0, yeah. Had a couple of students who we gave a ride up to Buffalo to a couple of students, Anthony Steepa and Todd Ordanker. We took the trip up to Buffalo and left because those guys had classes. We didn't get up there till almost 1 a.m. with traffic. Fall asleep, cover the game. The game was what it was. What a bizarre locker room to walk into, because all those guys were nice guys, but they were all kind of doing I don't know what happened there. Talking to, I can't remember if I talked to Schulters, talked to Jaquan. Everybody was kind of stunned, how 4 guys in that area, Naaman Roosevelt, kind of just slips forward and kind of relatively easily won a jump ball that really should have just been batted down.
It was pre-Kyle. I always kind of confused that with the UConn Hail Mary to win, where it's it should have been, or when Bruce Francis didn't get the foot down or whatever it was. When you rewatch the Buffalo Hail Mary, you go, you got that pretty easily.
Yeah, very easily.
Roosevelt came down with that pretty easily.
And I just remember watching the press box and as it's shaping up, I'm like, wow, that's going to be a touchdown. You could see it. You could see it unfolding of what are those guys doing? It was just a weird thing. And Adam DeMichael who's now on the coaching staff, had just led a scoring drive, and it would have been a really, really nice win for that program, because back in 2008, as cliche and coach speak as it sounds, they were still learning how to win. That was the big thing. Play the next play, all those things that Al Golden really had to reinforce, because the program was in the toilet before that. That would have been a really nice win for them, because Buffalo was still, when he got there, and it was Turner Gill was the coach. They were second to last and last in terms of 2 toilet programs. And Buffalo had started to turn the corner. Temple was starting to turn the corner. That would have been a really nice win for them. It was just such a bizarre game, and covered the game, and then we drove home in the rain afterwards. I remember we got home at 2 a.m. Miserable road trip.
A lot of this is, if this had continued to go this way, they would have made the MAC championship that year. They would have gone 6-6. They would have had the tiebreaker against Buffalo. And then that goes that. Rewatching it, not to name names, it looks like a linebacker runs into some of the defensive backs trying to play the ball, and that takes them out of the game. Just they did all the things you do when you don't want to defend a Hail Mary.
There you go. Anyway, thanks for all the mailbag questions from the message board and Twitter. Thanks for hanging out with us for another week. We will be with you next week to talk about the Temple Buffalo game, any breaking recruiting news that happens, any musings from Kyle. Maybe Graham will be back with us.
See,
again.
it's a 3:30 kick, right?
Yeah.
So I have the wedding. I have like the ceremony at like noon, but then the ceremony at noon. The reception's not till like 5:30, 6. So I got like 5 hours in Long Island by myself. Not by myself, with my wife. And
do I subject Graham to my iPod on the way up?
You still use an iPod?
I have it just for that road trip. Yeah, plug it into a little USB thing and leave it at 6 in the morning.
And Don, our photographer,
Don
will be there.
Don Otto. You've been very patient with my music selection. You've embraced some of the music.
We're going to talk about this again.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. Talk to you soon.